oh, there's Uncle Jim, we'll let Uncle Jim come in. Oh, he's a police officer, he can go next. Americans, you do not, never, ever, ever. Calm down, Diane. So today we are going to talk about 10 social rules or social cues that foreigners must obey when they go to the United States of America, or they'll be lynched. Do you still lynch? You don't lynch. It's just good to follow the social cues. Europeans and Americans are quite similar on the face of it. Most of us speak English. We're largely parts of Western culture, but we're so different. There are so many things that are different, and those are the things that I find interesting and exciting. So let's jump right into it. The first thing that I find super interesting is how quick American people, not all, but some, do I need to do that disclaimer in this video? We're talking in generalizations. Some Americans are very quick to diagnose you. I've been diagnosed in comments with everything from bipolar disorder to schizophrenia.
Are we really surprised?
I do find American people like a label, and I think that can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing that mental health issues are becoming more aware. Also, diagnoses, like somebody suggested to me recently, maybe I had dyslexia with numbers. I didn't even know that was a technical thing. I think I'm just bad at numbers, but from an American's perspective, it was the smart thing to try and give it a label. Sometimes I do think a label can be good. It can help you get help if you need help, but other times I'm like, sometimes you live to your label. Another thing, for example, is I've always had anxiety and I've gone through bouts of depression. And I find that some Americans are very quick to use that as a signifier of your entire personality. Whereas for me, it's just a thing that I have gone through. I might go through again at stages in my life, but it doesn't define me.
She's fun, but she's crazy.
Again, a good thing and a bad thing about this is awareness is really, really good. If you know what is going on, you can identify it, you can get it sorted out. But another thing is there can be a tendency to over-medicate when you diagnose somebody with something. Now, don't get me wrong, medication does have a time and a place, but it happens, in my opinion, like a really lot in the USA compared to Europe. The next thing that you guys need to know that is a big difference between Americans and Europeans is American people do not like staring. Now, I do think Irish people and people in the UK also don't like staring. If you stare at people in Ireland or England, I think in Scotland too, you will get like a not so great reaction. People can deem this to be an aggressive thing. Whereas in countries like Italy, Spain, staring is very normal. It's part of the culture. Children stare and they're not told it's like necessarily a bad thing. And I asked my niece about it because she grew up in Spain and she said that it's not staring, it's just looking. And you can't really argue with that, I suppose, especially with a child. You're just looking, you want to know what's happening. But in America, if you stare, it is not a good thing. However, there's a definite out in America if you find yourself staring. I do stare off into space sometimes. I'm not even looking at anything, but I'll just be like. Anyway, the out if you are in the United States of America and you find yourself accidentally staring at somebody is to smile. Really simple. Americans freaking love smiling. They love smiling at each other. I think it's a lovely thing that you guys do. And yeah, that's your out. If you're caught staring at an American, just smile. They might think you're hitting on them, but that could be good or bad too. In a similar vein, American people really like their personal space, and depending on where you are from in Europe, it might not be a thing that you're super into. I have noticed, and the more people I've said it to have agreed with me, Scandinavian people from Europe particularly stand really close to you. On Patreon recently, we went to a Swedish supermarket, and when I was there were like people just stand super close to you. I'm probably more conscious of it since the whole social distancing thing. Can we bring back social distancing? That was good. I enjoyed the social distancing. But Americans particularly like their personal space. In fact, I'm pretty sure we first heard the term personal space from Americans.
Would you mind moving back? You're in my personal space.
I think I heard it when I was a kid and I was like, that's a great term. I'm going to use that. So if you're Scandinavian, maybe be super conscious of that one. Of course, people in Scandinavian countries have like a really great way of life, lifestyle wise, so you know, why wouldn't they want to stand really close to each other? The next thing you need to be aware of if you are visiting the United States is way more so than in Europe. Be conscious of where you are. You are both way safer in the United States and simultaneously way less safe in the United States. There are way more people in the USA, and there are tons of especially kind people and people you can ask. Americans love being asked stuff. They will help you out. And there are areas in the United States, whole areas, you're really not recommended to go in unless you are from there. This shocked me the first couple of times I went to the States because pretty much you can wander anywhere in most parts of Europe. There are dodgy kind of areas, but you like still can go in them most times. But there are whole no-go areas in the States unless you grew up there or are with somebody who grew up there. Another reason it is a little bit more dangerous, well, I say a little bit, I'm probably underplaying that. There are a lot more places for bad people to hide. So you hear about random children being pulled off the street and kidnapped. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in Europe, but there's a lot more places for people to hide. Whereas if you were in a country like Ireland or Spain, it's less easy to hide because they're smaller places. So if you want to murder somebody, go to the United States because you'll probably get away with it. That's a story for another day. The next social cue, and oh my gosh, this is perhaps one of the things I am like, go America. I am Team America on this one. Lines. Lines have rules. You stand in your line, you take your turn. This is not always the case in European countries. I first discovered I was Team America on this when I went to America and was in a line, or what we would call a queue. And one of my biggest pet peeves in the entire world is side queuing. When you're in a line, one person after the other, and then someone just decides to like stand beside you. Like they know they're behind you, but they're kind of standing beside you, and they're like, well, we know, you and I know that I'm behind you. I'm like, but you're just bothering me by standing beside me. And you're like confusing the queue, and the queue is scrunching up, and it's, calm down, Diane. In America, when I was in a line and people started to side queue, I could see other people being agitated by the side queue. There are also countries in Europe where lines are very much a suggestion. Most big cities, like places tourists go, the lines, the queues are followed. But especially if you go somewhere a little bit like outside of a touristy area, like a town hall or something, the queue is not a thing. Oh, there's Uncle Jim, we'll let Uncle Jim come in. Oh, he's a police officer, he can go next. Ugh, it's frustrating. People in America like the queue, they obey the queue. Speaking of police, there are a lot of things about the police you may have heard in the news. However, one thing goes without saying, you take the police in the United States seriously. There are good cops, there are bad cops. We're not going to get into a debate about that today, but there is etiquette in America when you meet a cop. You do not get out of your car. I have been told this so many times. You do not get out of your car if you are pulled over in a vehicle. And also you are meant to put your hands on the wheel where they can see them. This is because pew-pews are a thing in America, whereas they are not so much of an issue in most parts of Europe. In Ireland, if a police officer pulls you over, you're more inclined to have a casual chat, a conversation. They are taken more seriously in Italy, Spain. Sometimes they can even be a little bit scary. But I also find a thing that Americans do is call the cops officer or sir, whereas that is not really a thing in most parts of Europe. You've heard the term comply, and that is you just comply. You say what they want to know, and you get on your way. You don't have chats. You don't have the banter like you do with the Gardaí. English bobbies also are quite usually chatty, but you just keep it formal with the American police officers. Unless you happen to stroll into a casual conversation, which is great. The next social cue you need to know about Americans, and I learned this one the hard way. Americans take competition seriously. You might think, oh, this is a friendly game of snooker. No, they're gonna take that seriously. Yeah, everybody can have fun, but say you do something like that would be just a bit of like a jokey thing in like Ireland, snookering somebody so that their ball can't go in. They will take that as a dirty rule, dirty gameplay. Americans want to win. They want to win. This is why you're not allowed in Eurovision, America, because you take it too seriously. You would probably win. Americans' way of thinking is they are not going to get into a competition and just have the outcome be like, we had fun. They're like, if I'm going to be in a competition, I'm going to win. I'm going to take it seriously. Americans go all out. The next thing, and I learned this from YouTube comments. Oh, you guys teach me so many things. Gang signs. Gang signs and gang colors.
Please, no gang signs.
You want to be careful what way you put your hands, because you're probably doing a gang sign. You're probably, I mean, most parts of the States, this is not going to be an issue, but there are, especially in towns and cities, it could be a thing. You don't want to be wearing red where you should be wearing blue, or vice versa. Interestingly, though, the flip side to this is you can be on an opposing American football team supporter and you can go sit in the other crowd stands, whereas in soccer/football in Europe, you want to be in your own stands. You're not going to be welcomed too much. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you could go to the wrong kind of match and then it's just not a good time. Another thing that you need to know about social etiquette in the United States of America is you do not, never, ever, ever discipline somebody else's children. Now, if it's your friend, a friend of a friend, a close friend, maybe, you can do that if you know that's okay. But it's just generally you take care of your own children. You don't talk to other people's children. In parts of Europe, it's definitely seen more so like it's the community's responsibility to discipline children. So like if you're in parts of France and you see children misbehaving, you're okay to go out there and yell at them. Definitely where I grew up in Dublin, there are certain times where it's seen as like if you see a child being bold, you can give out to them. Like you're okay. But however, this is starting to change in Europe, and this inspires me to do another list. Let me know if you want to see it. It's things that Europe is adopting from America, because it can get you in trouble nowadays. You can't just go around disciplining other people's children willy-nilly, silly. So let me know if you want to see that list. And finally, number 1. Oh, actually, before I get to that, while you're here, do subscribe, leave a thumbs up on the video. It's always a fun time. Leave me a comment. I read them sometimes. Always in the first hour club. The number 1 thing that you need to know that is a social cue in America. If somebody is injured and they need an ambulance, unless they cannot communicate and it is clearly a dire situation, do not call an ambulance. I learned this from comments and then I researched it and whoa. In America, you are charged a huge freaking fee to use an ambulance. In most parts of Europe, unless you're going private, you do not have to pay for an ambulance. But they can charge astronomical amounts of money to pick you up in an ambulance. So in a lot of cases, American people would prefer to go with their leg hanging off on their bicycle. That would be difficult. Probably in a car. But basically, if you knock somebody over or if you find somebody on the side of the street looking unconscious-y but communicative, ask them, shall I call an ambulance? And if you think they are coherent and they say no, don't do it, because maybe they can't afford an ambulance, and that's a story for another day. And we're going to leave that one there.
Our first very cute shout out comes from Brian Edgar. He wants to say a happy belated Valentine's Day to all his fellow singles. He used to call it Singles Awareness Day, but he's come to realize it's not just for those who have a significant other, it's all about family, friends, and fur babies. So true, it's about love of all kinds. Thank you, Brian. Our second shout out comes from the always lovely and thoughtful Ricky Kerry. He says this month's shout out goes to all the childcare workers that take care of the children, keeping the children clean, happy, safe, and entertained throughout the day. That is so true, Ricky. The people that you trust your children to are so important and they deserve thanks. And thank you, Ricky.
That's it for today. See you guys on the other side. Bye. Well, look who it is, Mr. Chewy, who had a bath today. And then, what did you do? You went and got all dirty and you had to have another bath. Yes, you did. And that was Mommy's spare time. So now we have to go get editor Diane to start work. Yes, we do. We're running late on time.